So I'm so glad that you accepted my interview. Reading your book is like talking to a friend.
Oh, good. Yeah, glad to hear that.
Your book was published in 2007. In the past 14 years, is there anything new that you would like to add to the Iris story?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think that her husband, since then, there's a new edition of Rape of Nanking, and he has a very lengthy essay in there about what he thought led to her death. So that's an important point of view. But it's basically similar to my book, but he thinks that any mental illness came on right before her death. So my book, I tend to think, like with a lot of illnesses, I think it came on more gradually. Not just in the few months before her death. Or he wrote in the new edition, I think, of Rape of Nanking, he has like a new introduction or a new, he just emailed it to me, so I don't know what it looks like on the page. But yeah, basically, and now more of her archives are open at Stanford, but I haven't been there to go look. But basically, what I wrote is still what I stand by, and what I think what happened. So there hasn't been anything since then to.
Are there any ideas or thoughts have changed or they have been re-emphasized over the years?
As we talk, I might think of something, but right now, I think it's pretty much, the story is pretty much consistent to what's been found since then.
Do you still think of her after so many years?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yes, just nonstop. But when there's, I have been thinking about her with the politics with Trump. She wouldn't have been very good with that. So, that she was very upset about Bush before she died.
Yes. She had a lot of insight and foresight, all turned out to be true later, especially the Chinese in America are taking place right now.
Yeah, and that would have devastated her, all the increased violence against Asian Americans. But then the loss we probably would have had, if she would have gotten treated for depression, she could have come out better than ever, and been like a leading voice for Asian Americans still. So we lost that. So it's such a huge loss, not only for her friends like me, but I think, just Asian Americans in general, just a huge loss.
Yes. She was such a force. Yeah,
it's a tragedy where it didn't have to happen. And I just wanted to show what happened to her to prevent this from happening to other people. And it was something avoidable. It didn't have to happen. And it's just a huge ongoing loss.
Is your book translated into other languages, including Chinese?
Iris's book or my book?
Your book.
I don't think so. Or someone on her own might have translated it into Chinese.
Any Chinese organizations interviewed you or became interested in your book and talked to you?
Oh, yeah, I was interviewed for many documentaries, either about, there's been a lot of documentaries made about Iris. There's been crews from Hong Kong, from China, from San Francisco, from Hawaii. That have come here to Chicago when they do their research about Iris, and they've talked to me. This has been over the years. There's many documentaries. A lot of them on a small indie level.
You wrote so much about the female friendship, camaraderie, rivalry, jealousy, competitiveness. That's what I enjoy reading the most. I happened to publish a novel 3 years ago about a woman who is obsessed with her girlfriend's past obsession and depression. So she went to research for her and went to all the places she's been and help her get out of her situation. So when I read your book, it just reminded me of the two characters I created in my novel. I like to know what Iris meant to you as a girlfriend, because you mentioned earlier, even today, you still think of her a lot.
Yes. At first, I didn't know what to make of her because she was so direct, so open about her ambition, that especially as women, we're not supposed to. Even if you are ambitious, you're supposed to hide it a little bit. We were in college. She called the New York Times and she became a contributor to them from our college. and she was always a step ahead of everyone in getting. Yeah, in journalism, there's few internships, few jobs, and she was always a step ahead of me and a lot of others in getting everything, the few things that were available. But then I learned to really appreciate her and see her as an inspiration for thinking big. And often when I would go talk about my first book at colleges, they would ask me sometimes to go to a writing class, and I would always talk about Iris thinking big and then going for it and not letting self-doubt stop you. And so she became very inspiring. And then I wanted to write about a whole range of tensions, because this whole book, I wanted it to be very human and real. So that everyone she met had jealousy of her. So she seemed to have everything. So I didn't want to ignore that, but there was a risk that people could dismiss the book saying, "Oh, I'm just a jealous person," or I had or things like that. But I just wanted to show what happens in every friendship, and and show all the human flaws, my flaws, which are many, her flaws, to show that she wasn't like a superhero, that she was human like the rest of us. Let me see, I'm almost losing my train of thought. But yes. So I wrote about how everyone who met her was jealous of her looking. Yes. She actually got rich from her book. Usually when you write a book, you're in poverty. She went for like a weekend with the Clintons on a special Renaissance weekend, and knew all these celebrities. So, and then it's more typical for other authors like me, my friends, where where you don't reach that kind of that kind of height. So so she just seemed to have everything, more than anyone I knew.
Yeah, she was so ambitious and intense, and she didn't hide any of that. I encountered jealousy when I was younger. I became an author and got it published at the age of 17. So ever since then, I realized the importance that to show my weakness or to hide my ambition in front of other girlfriends. I understand what she came from, and her drive. But over the years, I think today I'm a mother of 3 children. When I look back, I'm not ambitious anymore. So I like to hear your side of story. What do you think of ambition, especially when such a bright, ambitious young woman like Iris died prematurely and she was so close to you?
No, it's so interesting you mentioned that, because I'm now doing more theater stuff. I just wrote a play about how having kids affected a very ambitious woman's ambition. Because it's similar to me, where I was always very ambitious, and now I have 2 kids. And you can't do everything. So my focus recently has been on the kids. So again, this has been at the top of my mind about how having kids affects ambitious women. And that was something that she wanted to write about. One of her story ideas was about the biological clock, that ironically, she was always aware about how kids and the energy they take can limit a talented and ambitious woman's career. So she was very fixed on that topic. And like I said, she was unusual, where she was so open about the ambition. So I think that when she went on her first date with her husband, she told him that she wanted to make the New York Times bestseller list. I have it in the book. Before she was 30 or something, that was her goal. So just very open about all those things. So she almost didn't know that you're supposed to, as a woman, be a little more, be a little more clever about it, or not saying everything so directly. So when she was in college, she turned a lot of people off being so direct. Yes. Like going into the college paper and saying, "How do I become editor?" The first day she's there, turning.
Yeah. People like that could be very annoying. And if you have a friend that's very direct, ambitious, competitive, sometimes you try to stay away from such aggressiveness. At J School of UC Berkeley, We had a guy like that, he happened to be Asian as well. And, he wanted to work for the New York Times and wanted to do this and do that. So all the other guys, that would talk to me in private, oh, I don't like him. So I think in our life, everybody has someone that they think, oh, this guy tries too hard. So actually, it doesn't matter which culture you come from. This type of forwardness or this type of directness can put people down, can turn people away from you.
Yeah, and you might have even said in your email to me, sometimes that's an immigrant thing. So, my grandparents are Jewish, and a lot of times people who are Jewish get criticized for being strivers or too ambitious. But yeah, it's just when you come to this country, you arrive with nothing, and then you have to be, very driven to make it. So it's almost like a luxury of to not be ambitious and driven if you're like born into riches and your family's been here for a long time. So yeah, it's like a recent immigrant thing often to be so driven and even open about it.
So I see that happening in many first generations. You mentioned a very good detail about her house being so modest, not decorated. So that's something like I see in so many immigrants' families. The house might be big. When you go inside, there's nothing. There's the boxes, there's the plastic wraps and stuff like that. I know what you're talking about. Actually, her parents, they had a Harvard PhD.
Yeah.
So this a high bar for,
and
you already have very successful parents.
Yeah, having two parents who were such high achievers. So yeah, it was a very big deal when she switched to journalism instead of one of the sciences. So that also fueled her ambition that she wanted to show her parents so she wasn't just going to be any journalist. She was going to be a very, someone achieving in journalism at the level that they achieved, in academia and the sciences.
I also want to share my 2 cents about Chinese culture. Actually, to be doctors and to be engineers have never been considered prestigious in Chinese culture, because in Chinese culture, to go to the imperial court was the ultimate success in the feudal times. To work in the imperial court as officials, you had to pass the civil test, and then you had to be writers, you have to be great poets. So in China, the literati, the poets were highly valued. Even today in China, doctors don't make much money. And if you're a dentist, nobody really cares. Oh, you look at the teeth every day. They just think it's boring. But when immigrants come to the United States, they don't have the language ability and they don't have the luxury of being a poet. They don't want to be a starved artist. So they kind of like switch to majors like engineer, doctors. So I guess this is such an immigrant thing. It's not so much like a Chinese thing. And in China, if you are a writer and if you are a poet, and then you'll have higher status.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that sounds, yeah. I'm just remembering vaguely her family, I think, had a lot of that status way back when in China. So but that's actually, I never thought about that before. Yeah, if you're an immigrant, that's something you can do to be stable and not, you have to be absolutely fluent in the language like you do as a writer.
Yes. So, she had the genes. I think her grandfather on her mother's side was a writer. So, and it was pretty accomplished. That's maybe motivated her. But I really would like to talk about her husband. I'm very interested in the pair, You wrote very neutrally about him, and I can see you are very grateful to him because he accepted your interview. Her mother didn't, which I think was unfortunate because at that point, there should be solidarity. People should protect Iris Chang, be united. She should give you perspective, but I don't know why she didn't.
So there was a sensitive issue about the mental illness. Where her view is that there basically wasn't it. Yeah, that it might have been something else. So it's very controversial. It's almost like a symbol of like I'm very or a symbol of the differences in cultures too. So
Oh, I like to elaborate on that later, but now I want to go back her husband.
oh yes.
But from what you wrote, so honestly, my feeling was that he didn't understand Eris on a deep level. Given his farm boy and engineering background, because I lived in Silicon Valley around the same time. I'm very familiar with the engineer type. I know so many of them. He also reacted to her family or her mother's point of views, like try to think it's a Chinese thing, and then just dismissed it, or he didn't want to listen to the Baton project, stuff like that. He married another Iris Chang a few months later, and later he divorced this woman. So the whole thing, I mean, it's all very familiar to me. He's an engineer type, and maybe it's kind of like simple in a way, but she was such a complex person culturally, psychologically, and she is almost a prophet, you know, in a way.
Very secure. Other men might have felt insecure around him. And he was a calming influence on her, or she needed someone who was not as intense and extremely complicated as her. So he was a very grounding, calming, very healthy influence in her life. And he was not controlling, so he was okay with her traveling for months at a time. And so she needed someone who was more hands off. So obviously the negative is that he might not have been as, if he was more in her face, he might have noticed some things earlier, and helped get treatment earlier.
Yes.
The iris, that was his philosophy.
Yes.
So I couldn't see her with any mate, who was in her face and trying to control her, or she needed someone who would just lay off of her and at the same time be a calming and grounding force in her life.
But I just think if I were a man, and if my wife had some mental illness, why would I still work? Why did I have to work? I can just sold my house. I can just quit my job. We can go to our island. You don't have to work every day. You don't have to travel, on business trips. You want to be with her in another environment. That's would be like very easy to think of. But it seems to me he was like a very like a middle class, very like follow the rules type guy, and didn't think out the box to try to change dramatically of the whole thing, because the depression can be treated in another environment more easily.
But it's complicated. So from all the signs that I looked at, it looked like she had bipolar depression, and there's not a lot of public. The reason I wrote the book is to have more public awareness of the signs. But a lot of the signs are just as like when it's less severe, it actually be beneficial for you. If you're an author, if you're in a more manic phase, you can go speak to thousands of people in one day, travel to a new city every day. So a lot of these traits that signal, a less serious bipolar illness, we don't often notice in our culture, especially if the person's successful and famous. So you just see them as eccentric and high energy. So there just hasn't been that much good public education about the signs and just how serious it is too. That when you have severe bipolar disorder, I mean it's more or as dangerous as having cancer.
Yeah, use several people as examples. One is Ernest Hemingway. So I read an article from a UC Davis professor who tried to compare Hemingway's death with Iris Chang's death. Both were suicidal. Both of them were followed by government for some unknown reason. Both very creative type of people and chose the death. Another Example would be Chang. He was a professor, very smart in the physics department of Stanford University. This Chinese guy, he committed suicide about 3 years ago, and with no sign. And when you listen to him speech, you would think he's the brightest and the most optimistic person in the world, so eloquent and so charming and everything. You would not think of him with death, but he was having some problems. The government was studying him and investigating him. Because in your book, you mentioned the external force and the Louisville, Kentucky experience. Do you think those experiences intensified her mental illness?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the last year of her life, she started to lose more. She started to lose track of reality a lot more, and but then all of her fears were based in reality. So that's the thing. I mean, everything she was nervous about or afraid about was based in reality. That I did a Freedom of Information search with the State Department, and on high levels of the Japanese and American ambassadors to Japan, they were talking about her riling up anti-Japan sentiment in the U.S. And they were concerned about it. So yes, they were concerned about her. But then in the mental illness, she saw them as like following her, opening her mail. And then she for her last book was going to be about the Bataan Death March, and she was in Louisville to interview some people who were in the U.S. military. And I think when she saw the generals or the people, the military people, she was afraid
the Kelly.
That they were after her now. And so like I said, this is something that should have been treated years before. That often in every culture, and it seems like especially in Asian culture, that they only really treat the bipolar disorder when it's like at the 11th hour, when it's like spun out of control. So it needed to have been treated much earlier in her life.
I could imagine like she was alone by herself. She didn't belong to any organization. Nobody was protecting her. And then she got all those threats and the fears from this Baton project.
But like I mentioned, she also got phone calls that were threatening. So obviously that would terrify anybody.
And then when you were put in an institution, like a mental institution by force, and it just reminded me of the movie Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest. Watch some movies about Van Gogh. All these, portrayal of mental institutions. I can imagine why she didn't want to go. It's kind of scary. Both her husband and her parents try to play down the government and the internal forces part. I only read that in your book. I didn't find the information elsewhere. So it was like discovery for me to read it. Wow. Yeah, you mentioned that she was a thorn to the US government. So all these things are new to me. I didn't know any of that. I didn't find any information from her husband or her mother about that. Why do you think they try to play down these things?
So yeah, I only saw that documented. I did a Freedom of Information Act request with the FBI, CIA, State Department for any files they had on Iris, and then the State Department responded. I forgot, it was maybe like 6 months to a year later. I was in the apartment building and I went down to get the newspaper, and there was a package like this from the U.S. State Department just in front of the apartment building door on the sidewalk. And I read through all of it. A lot of it was cables from the U.S. to the Japanese embassy, and concern about her whipping up the U.S. people into a frenzy with rape of Nanking, against Japan. So yeah, the word thorn. She was a thorn in their side, where she was an irritant. But it didn't go as far as like, oh, we're going to surveil her or punish her. It was more like, they were talking about how she's a source of awkwardness between the Japanese and American diplomats. So like I said, that all was just documented by the Freedom of Information request with these cables to these from these diplomats back and forth about her. Yeah, it's very complicated. I'm happy that her mom wrote a book because Iris is so complicated. You need, my book obviously is not sufficient. So she fills in about the family and things I could never know about. So, but they're different. So I came at it as an investigative journalist and as a friend. So I don't know if they ever. So I think I was the only one to do the Freedom of Information Act request with the State Department. So we have different focuses. I don't want to criticize her mom. It's been hard. I don't want to criticize her and add more pain to her life after all she's gone through with losing her daughter. So I could just say we just come from different points of view, and maybe as a journalist, as a third generation American, I'm more. I was more into writing about more of mental illness and the complexities of what happened to her.
You said her views are considered opposite. What are her views? Can you summarize?
So basically that it wasn't mental illness, that possibly it could have been some medication she was on at the end that made her do this. But I talked to her therapist, and he said that he put her on like minuscule doses of these medications. So it's extremely sensitive topic between her and I. And I've, in my career, I've written about women's health issues. So it's more natural, where big thing I've written about chronic pain in women, invisible illness in women. So it was natural for me to talk about all these things. So.
But she's a biologist, so
right.
She's an expert on some stuff as well. From my perspective, I don't know about psychiatry. I know about psychology, but I do have problem with dosage before, because a lot of the science, they use white people as the experiment. So when it comes to the dosage, it can be very strong for a woman like me who is smaller. I had a Bell's palsy after a flu shot. If I had a smaller dosage, maybe I could have avoided, I don't know. But things like that, I think dosage does play a little bit difference in my life. Some certain vitamins, I take, it can be very strong, and I can only take a certain dosage. Our skins are different, our bodies are different, and I'm a very sensitive type of person. So I don't need to drink caffeine. I get very excited. So things like that, everybody's different. But I do think she had some problem, whatever that was intensified by her fear, because she wrote the book and she became very successful. That's a typical immigrant story. You want to be in the mainstream and you want to be interviewed and, have a dialogue on PBS with our minister from Japan. Those are the highlights of her life. And then she didn't realize that, such a success can lead an interest in government. Government people would have cables about her, behind her back. If she knew that, it's a lot of fear, because she had nobody else, just no organization to protect. It's not like she belongs to the Democrat Party, or she's alone. She's a very lonely person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it wasn't just her underlying biology. These circumstances would have driven anybody, would have caused anyone anxiety and fear.
I also feel like these science people are wrong her, even her brother, her husband, her parents. I mean, they give her a lot of emotional support. But if there's some type of counselors, they give you advices, they might not be the best of advisors in the world. She was so lonely, and I also feel like from your book, she consciously intended to be mainstream and to be friend with white people. And especially that proves when she said she feels like a Caucasian, and all her younger years, she, fantasized about her boyfriend always to be white.
Right. Yeah, this is some of the complexity of her, that she and Brett, her husband, had a lot in common as being Midwestern. They actually, it looks like they're so different because he's like so white, Scottish American. Yeah, she was Chinese American, but they actually grew up in very similar areas. And Iris was extremely American, where she often annoyed Wang when she talked. So so she was extremely American. There's a huge side of her, and she and Brett had more in common than you would think, with their background. Mm-hmm. If you don't look at race.
She's a little bit, we would say, whitewashed. Even in the Black community, you have the Obama type, you have the, more Black community type. So she would fall into the very white, marry a Jewish or white. Reading your book, I didn't find many Asian friends she had.
She had some, definitely. But I think her main friends were not Asian.
Yes.
But she definitely had. There was Lee Wen, who I interviewed, a friend of hers. A few others here in Chicago, but I think the ones who were closest, her best friend was probably Barb Mason, who was another brilliant author that she met in San Francisco, who was Caucasian. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. She was definitely Midwestern American girl or woman.
So I also feel like because the sensitivity with the Chinese government, the perpetual foreigner perception of being Asian, so maybe she tried to stay away from the Chinese community or China. Even China had a statue of her. She wasn't close to China at all.
No, well, I'd say it's very complicated. So she did travel through China on her own, for the rape of Nang King, and yes, she did connect with all these Asian American organizations on a personal level and had friends from them. So it's complicated. It's complicated. She was so close to her family, and her family was so culturally Chinese. Mm-hmm. But also it was very complicated because her mom. We talked about this because we have similarities in our families, where my mom was very overprotective. Mm-hmm. So that is a way that we bonded, and her mom was very, very protective. So in some ways, the Chinese past represents her being less, being more under surveillance and less free to be who she is. Mm-hmm. So when she went to California with Brett, she escaped that and was able to focus on her independent side and not worry about her parents, because she was just so I see this with my own family. It's positive and negative that we have such close families. So it's positive because you have that amazing foundation and love, but then a negative could be if you're a very independent person, you could feel suffocated by them.
When it comes to US, it's natural for immigrants kids to rebel. I don't know one single immigrant kid that not to rebel or say bad things about their parents, because this is so different.
Yeah.
Because it's like they want to embrace the new culture. So naturally, their parents become a barrier and they look down on their parents' culture. Her parents gave her this pride. So she's very proud of who she is. But at the same time, she wants to be accepted by the mainstreams.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very complicated. So she loved her parents so much and wanted them to be proud of her, but she also wanted to go out on her own. So yeah, it was just
but
a constant struggle in her life.
it's funny that her mom used the word, she's naive. What do you think this naive mean?
Yeah, yeah. I see the mom's point where she was naive. I think what she meant by that was she was so innocent. So when she would see these atrocities, she was like shocked beyond shocked. So someone else more cynical and world weary might have learned about all these atrocities that, I mean, there are horrible things that happen, so anybody would be affected, but I think she was affected even more than most people, just being so innocent and yeah, just shocked about any bad stuff that happened in the world, and just affected so strongly. She was a very sensitive person. That sort of goes along with that.
I was wondering if she meant that she was this crusader. Once she saw this, she had this sense of justice, almost heroic type of naivete.
Right. Yeah, that's, you're not looking at the consequences. So just being blinded by the passion to act, and then not being aware of all the dangers. So that's the negative side of, you know, I used to, when I talked to writing classes, I would tell them to iris Chang it, to just go for things and don't think about all your anxieties about it or why you shouldn't be doing it. So
the consequences.
Right.
Yes.
So because she was such a doer, she had amazing achievements, but then she also, yeah, often wasn't thinking about the consequences. You know,
Yeah.
how much she was riling up people.
Yes. Actually, she went to see that exhibition of Nanking in 1994. I was in San Jose and I went to see that exhibition as well. But I was like 5 minutes there, and my friend, a volunteer who drove me there, she said, "Oh, let's go." And we left. Too much for me. And I realized it can affect my mental health. I don't want to have nightmares. I don't want to be depressed. So I left in the middle.
Exactly. That was a big point of me writing the book, was to say, people, it's okay to write about dark, negative things, but you have to protect yourself also. So it's like when a firefighter goes into a fire, they have a fireproof suit. So she went into the fire, writing about all this unbelievably disturbing stuff without any therapy, sense of self-preservation. Because after she died, people were starting to talk. I was afraid people would think that that it was purely the negative stuff, and then people wouldn't want to write about anything negative for fear of just one day waking up and killing themselves. But I wanted to show that while all the dark stuff was a definite influence, she needed to have that, as a sensitive person, she needed to protect herself mentally. There was no effort or a need to protect yourself mentally. That in all these different occupations where there's dangers, you have special training and precautions, but she just dove right into the fire without any protection at all.
Yes. So I don't know what she did for fun, what she did to escape from her work. And you also mentioned about the long hours in the marathon, phone conversation with friends. So it seems to me that she was so focused.
But she was extremely focused on the work more than anything.
Yeah. So how has her death changed you?
Yeah, it's hard to say that. Maybe I'm less rough on myself for not super achieving while I'm in this phase of my life with having kids. You know, that just to give myself a break.
Yes.
And just live like a normal person without worrying about achievements
Yes.
As much.
It's a blessing sometimes to be in Confucianism. The doctrine of the means is good to be in the middle, to be average. That's the blessing.
That's
because you have to reach a certain equilibrium, burn yourself like a candle, and then, you know, price you have to pay.
Yeah, interesting. I was writing this down because that's interesting. Yeah, if you happen to have anything about that philosophy to send me or any links to anything about that, go ahead. You know, it's a very interesting concept on so many levels. Because I write about health, and ambition and all those things.
Yeah. To conserve your energy is good, can be sustainable.
Right.
So interesting that all of the friends were so shocked by her death, so difficult for them to tie her with suicide.
Yeah, we were all shocked. Because, like I said, she was the person that had the most to live for. Where she had worked unbelievably hard to build this career and her family, and it had so much good stuff. So it was just, so at first, I did more research for the book. It made more sense.
Yeah. I also read many spy novels and with the current situation going on and stuff. So I wanted to know your opinion on some of the conspiracy theories.
So that was another reason I wrote the book, was to try to, there are already conspiracy theories forming within, days of her death. And there was, okay, so some of it was rooted in reality. Like we talked about, she was a thorn in the side of the U.S. government. And I've never had, I knew there'd be conspiracy theories about her death. And she was sucked in by, there's so many conspiracy theories obviously growing every year online. And maybe like 30 years ago, she was conspiracy minded. Maybe she would get a magazine with it like once a month. Here she can go conspiracy by the use. She didn't have filters to filter anything out. So any conspiracy theory toward the end of her life that she read, she believed. It was like she was lacking any kind of critical tools. There was, like she, in her last conversation with me, she had remorse about living by electrical lines when she was pregnant, that thinking that she quote gave her son autism because she had read something on the internet about electrical lines causing autism. So if this is a sign of mental illness, of just having fewer filters of able to dismiss conspiracies that are around you.
I don't think it's a sign of mental illness. I would tend to think it's more like into supernatural stuff, superstitious. I just think some creative people, they have wild imagination. So they're also into supernatural stuff. It's kind of natural. For example, I have some friends that are very creative, some bad luck, or they have some things happen. They say, oh, I shouldn't put my glass there, or I should change my door to face somewhere else. They would link something that have nothing to do with the bad luck itself, try to find the hints and stuff.
Yeah, you're definitely more creative people. You're good at connecting dots that haven't been connected before. And sensitive person, but it just got so bad toward the end where she had totally lost touch with reality.
But one thing I noticed is in your book, you mentioned the Bay Area. Some of the friends belong to the Global Alliance, organized that photo exhibition. Their phones were tapped. That caused her become more nervous. And then I tried to understand why their phones are tapped.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, like I said, these fears were based in reality, where in the government, the U.S. government's big ally in Asia is Japan, and they want to have like as good relations with Japan as possible. And then here was Iris writing negatively about the Japanese and demanding apology for the atrocity. And obviously, there's a big right wing in Japan that's against this. So yeah, I see a reason for the U.S. to be concerned. But then toward the end, or she had seen like the movie National Treasure and the Manchurian Candidate, and saw them as like real. These were like fantasy movies, but seeing them as real, and
yes.
yeah, like just a level beyond yeah,
reason.
or in distress to the point where she killed herself. So,
And there's so many ways of dying. Why would she choose an antique gun? Very surprising.
yeah, it's so extreme or it's so violent is the way to
Exactly.
die.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when people get a gun, they really wanna die. They're not just yeah, they're 100% wanna die. So yeah, very violent of suicide. So I say in the book, the reason she got the antique gun is that she had been in a mental hospital and then in California not allowed to buy a gun because of that. But then there was a loophole to buy an antique gun.
Yes. You mentioned in your book about FBI has a thing for Asian Americans. Also, she was talking about the Wen Ho Li case. Look at today, Chinese scientists were accused and it turned out to be false again. Maybe she also experienced that when she did the research on Chinese in America, or even her first book about Chen Xuesen.
Yeah, definitely. All the fears were based in reality. So, yeah, absolutely. So, if not all this stuff happened to her with the controversy of her book, she might still be alive today.
Yes.
So, but then I'm also talking about when you do cover extremely controversial and disturbing things like she was, to have some kind of support or protection against it mentally, which she didn't.
Yes.
So
yes.
There's also a big stigma around mental illness. That's in every group. So the thought of seeing that, yeah, she didn't. That's not a group she wanted to identify with. So.
I just think she was too proud of admitting she had her failures. It's interesting that you mentioned about a surrogate mother gave birth to her child. What's called IVF caused her mood swing. I actually know several Chinese women. They use the surrogate mothers and to give birth to their children. They are okay. I mean, those things haven't affected their mentally.
Right.
So it's not that a big deal for them. Her child being autistic, it's probably a major factor, cause her more depressed.
Right. Yeah. All these things sort of converged. And then, yeah, being an extremely sensitive person to begin with. Yeah, actually, I've seen pictures on Facebook of him, but yeah, he still needs a lot of care as far as I know. Yeah, I don't have recent details about it.
So he's taken care of by his grandparents on his father's side?
Correct. Very autistic. Yeah, he's far, I don't, it's all a spectrum, but he's, yeah, very, he'll need care probably always.
Also, I would like to just discuss some of the cultural issues. I can give you my perspective, just a few things. One is about the ring. I told you it's not the Chinese tradition to wear a wedding ring. So I don't, she was so American, so I don't know. I mean, if she was so American, so Midwestern, she should have.
Yeah, or she would just explain to me that she didn't want anything in her way or anything else. She was so focused, she just wanted to focus on her work and not losing a ring or...
Yes, I'm like that. I have a ring, very expensive. I'm not used to wearing it. It's not comfortable. You know, some people say precious stones have 5 elements or they can boost your energy or stuff like that. And then you also mentioned about this woman called Barbara Mason. Yeah. So why do you think she didn't want to talk about her death or her mental illness?
She basically said that, yeah, she wasn't very specific, but it's basically too sensitive of a topic, to talk about all this, as a friend wanting just to keep it confidential between her and Iris. So I didn't push her because, I think I came to this as a journalist where you're trying to get all the information possible, but she's from the perspective of a close friend.
Sometimes, as an investigative journalist, you want to know, you want to dig the truth, but you don't want to be too nosy.
Right. Yes, I didn't push. People didn't want to talk to me. I didn't push them at all.
Yeah.
So it was enough. other topic I want to maybe push, but here I just like, okay, I won't bother them.
Everybody has a secret. I respect that. Yeah. Also, I want to talk about the intensity of her phone conversations. And it's not just you. Many people just didn't want to return her phone calls. So I had experienced that as well. Sometimes I'm so talkative. My friends, I have an incoming, hung up on me. So she didn't get the hint. It's funny, but can you tell me why do you think I didn't want to take her phone calls?
It was just so much energy, or if you're trying to get work done in the middle of the day, you don't have time for like a 3-hour conversation, or it just takes a lot of energy to talk to somebody for that long. Maybe she just assumed everybody had the same amount of unlimited energy that she had. So it could be disruptive. But if I'm very, it was hard for me to return the call. Say I had a migraine and was tired, I would wait, until I had felt well and had a huge amount of time to call her back. So,
I also want to see if there's a cultural thing, because when I was in China, people didn't have to work this hard, in the so we're more relaxed. The personal boundary is blurry. So people talk hours and hours. I mean, they would be.
I didn't realize.
Close.
I'm learning a lot from you about the cultural stuff.
Yeah. So people would be so close, they can accept that. But here, everybody wants some privacy in the room. You don't want to have a conversation that lasts too long. In China, because people are very close, big population, you talk to people and people talk to you, and this can go on for hours. But here, I realize I need to be polite. I need not to be intrusive. So I know when to stop. But it's funny, like she was born here and she didn't get a hint. Why?
Yeah, or it's almost her mom. Had naive, or she wasn't good. Maybe she was a tiny bit, a very, very, very tiny bit on the spectrum. Where you don't get. She wasn't good at getting social cues. So someone else might sense the person is uncomfortable or restless and say, "Oh, do you have to go?" But if she wasn't good at seeing social cues at all.
Would you say she was too self-absorbed or maybe a little bit narcissistic?
You can look at it as self-absorbed and narcissistic, or you can look at it just very focused and passionate. And I would never call her narcissistic, just bad at social cues. She was an extremely nice, good, compassionate, caring person. I can't say that enough. So she really was trying to help me. I have chronic migraine, or always trying to help me with that, give me suggestions. Like I said, we talk more about my health stuff than hers. She was trying to get me into acupuncture, alternative medicine. So yeah, deep down, and I would never call her a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she was just extremely good to the core. Caring, compassionate, sensitive, just a strong personality and very focused on whatever she's talking about. Like, I think her husband said it's the opposite of ADD, attention deficit disorder, where people all over the place. I forgot his term. It's in the book, where it's the opposite, where she's so focused and only is thinking about that. Like during a walk, she and Brett went by a nude beach. She was so focused on talking about, I think they're talking about like the causes of poverty in America, that she didn't even notice all these naked people around.
Yeah, that was so hilarious.
Yeah, never even noticed it. Yeah, she's just so focused on what she's talking about that everything else gets blocked out.
Yes. Jealousy is such a thing that unless you become extremely successful and everything, they will validate that. But before your success, these are all your problems.
Whoops, yeah, or you froze a little bit. But.
Yes. So I also want to talk about this homecoming queen thing. And this is very much her, and I can understand completely also about this. You think a sorority is being shallow and be religious. Why would she want to join a sorority? I joined a sorority for the same reason, because we want to be accepted. We want to have a taste of mainstream culture, and we want to be friends with those shallow girls because they're popular. See, this is something I think maybe from an immigrant point of view, all the homecoming queen or sorority things are very American. You know, it doesn't matter if secular or religious, they want to have experience.
Yeah, she's human like all of us. I wouldn't use, well, it's very complicated. So rebellious implies that you're looking down on your parents, but she respected them tremendously, but she did want to forge her own path. So I don't know if rebellious is too strong of a word, because she always did respect them and love them, didn't want to ever hurt them at all. But she needed to get to go on her own path.
Her husband's relationship with her parents, did they get along, or did they have a lot of disagreement on things?
Yeah, I'm actually not. Yeah, I'm probably not the best person to comment on that. It seems like they have a very cordial relationship. You know, yeah, it's hard for me to say.
Yes, we're just making wild guesses. These things.
Yeah, I would just be guessing, but it just seems from what I've seen, it's cordial, and they have disagreements, but then they get beyond it, you know, to talk about Christopher and, you know, their mutual desire to help him.
Yes. Do you think her husband or her parents might be warned or might had a conversation with government?
Definitely. I've never mentioned the government, the U.S. government, which the parents have said, but yeah, I don't know anything about that.
But the reason I'm asking this is because I feel you are more open in your book and you say things more freely.
Yeah, there's definitely tensions, definitely.
You fought for her.
Oh, thank you. And I really appreciate that.
Yes.
Misunderstand.
Yeah.
Where I'm portraying her vulnerable human side. We can stay in touch, definitely.
Yes. You don't say, but I can read the hints. So I feel like I know you so well, but I also want to share with you my perspective so that you can know the Chinese side of her.
That's what I've learned. I've taken notes. Yeah, you've really taught me a lot about the Chinese culture. Yeah, I wish I would have known you before the interview for the book, because that's a very interesting point of view about things that we can see as quirks here, like with the ring, or talking for 3 hours in a typical conversation. It's quirks, but it makes more sense with the Chinese culture. So do you have, like, are you on Facebook or Twitter to follow?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and Twitter. How about you?
Yeah, on both. Yeah, I have an author page on Facebook, and then I'm on Twitter. If you look for Paula Kamen.
Okay.
It's at Paula Kamen. Paula, I think, -Kamen.
Okay, got it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that was a reason. Yeah, that was a reason for our bond.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope one day we can see each other, whether it's in Chicago or in Houston.
Yeah, if I'm in Houston, I'll look you up. If you're in Chicago, let me know.
Thank you so much, Paula.
My pleasure. Like I said, I learned a lot, and yeah, feel free to email with any follow-ups. So we'll keep in touch.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Take care.